Hey there, it's Emily, and as I shared in my last video, I recently built myself a gaming PC, so I thought it was time to tackle the age-old question, physical versus digital games. As a channel that has primarily focused on video game collecting topics and having mostly only purchased physical games these last few years, I thought this would be an interesting topic to kind of finally address, especially because I am starting to kind of dip my toes a bit more into the digital space and kind of share just my overall thoughts of moving forward, how I plan to balance the two and kind of weigh some of the pros and cons on both sides, because like everything, right, there's pros and cons on both sides. I guess I'll start with some of the obvious things to get out of the way. What I really like about physical media that I still really enjoy is the ownership that comes along with owning your physical games. But unfortunately, when it comes to a lot of modern games, ownership is not always guaranteed if you have the game physically on disc or on a cartridge. As we've seen with many cases of having to rely on the internet to patch up games with game-breaking bugs or just really clunky performance issues. Having become more aware of the situation the last few years, I've been really trying to be more selective when it comes to which physical games I own and decide to put on the shelves behind me, and really try to make more of a conscious decision in buying physical games that have pretty decent builds where you don't really have to rely on some sort of internet connection in order to enjoy them. Most games will be able to run just fine without any patches, which I feel like there's a lot of disinformation about this particular point on the internet oftentimes. If you have a lot of live service games, or there are a few instances where there were game-breaking bugs, and that's a whole nother story, but fortunately, most games, at least at the moment, do not suffer from those issues where you have to rely on some sort of internet connection in order to play your physical media. Now, it's not always the ideal way to play them, as we've seen with various performance issues on the older hardware and for modern systems, the base Nintendo Switch models. Maybe this will be corrected in the future with the Switch 2, but at this moment, we don't really have any information when it comes to backwards compatibility and potential upscaling features that will be native on the system or not. But just like with anything, there's always potential negatives or consequences with choosing one path over the other. With physical media, even if you may tangibly own certain items that may not require internet or any sort of intervention to play them, there may be some sort of expiration date that's beyond our control with just physical things in general. Whether it's disk rot or things just not working years down the line because of flash memory problems and other potential issues with especially modern games nowadays. There's also just natural disasters that can happen that can take away your collection from you in the blink of an eye. Like, for example, here where I live in California, there are a lot of devastating natural disasters that happen basically almost on an annual basis. Like recently in LA with their devastating fires, and we also have a lot of earthquakes and other potential threats that can just take away your collection from you in a blink of an eye. And besides other things that could take your physical media away from you beyond your control, there are other things to consider, like space. If you live in a very small studio apartment like I do, you only have so much space to occupy it with things. So many people have opted for the digital route as a space-saving way to still enjoy their hobbies while not having to worry about items. And I'll have to say, as someone who has moved multiple times over the past few years, moving with a lot of games and just other collectibles is no fun at all. There were times where I was moving, it just felt like a burden to bring things with me, unfortunately. And I've had to sell off or give away a lot of different items over the years. And having a huge mass of a collection behind me is something that has been on the back of my mind, especially if I will be moving for job opportunities or some other reasons in the future. Something that I could, of course, think about later and push off, but it's always something that kind of looms over you if you are someone who unfortunately is in a situation where you have to move often. So those are a lot of things to take into consideration when buying physical media when it comes to ownership and the burden of just owning physical things. But not to weigh things too heavily on the negative, I think I will always be a collector. I've always really enjoyed being surrounded by things I love and things that make me happy. So I don't think me being a physical collector is ever going to go away. I might try to scale back and go on my infinite long journey of curating my collection. But I do find a lot of joy and fulfillment in doing that, which I think is a relatively healthy way to approach collecting. Instead of amassing just everything as much as possible, that kind of borders a little bit on the hoarding side of things. But I think if you like to reevaluate your collection and let it grow and expand, but also reduce organically, it's a beautiful thing and a very enriching hobby to have that lets you enjoy games for more than just playing the games themselves. But now to move over to the digital side of things, and kind of prior to having a PC, I didn't own a lot of digital games. I have a few on my Nintendo Switch that at the time were digital only, and I've also had a few game codes given to me from publishers or developers for me to review games, so I naturally have a few of those as well. But I never really had much of a PC or Steam library, because when I was primarily playing games on PC when I was younger, they were all either on CD-ROM physically or tied to the internet in some way. From all the different Flash games you could play on various browsers and websites, or some of the more MMO style type of games that I used to dabble as a teenager, like WoW and RuneScape. But now, having built a gaming PC, I've been kind of dabbling more into different areas of ways to play games. And before I dive into the digital side of things, I do want to first address that I did end up building a gaming PC for multiple reasons outside of just playing digital games. For one, I've been really interested in having a desktop for my work. I'm a statistician, so I work with a lot of data and I have to use a lot of programs on a computer. So a desktop is really the ideal space for me to work. And also having this YouTube channel, unfortunately, a lot of the laptops I had were not really cutting it when it came to processing and editing videos. So that's why I decided to go with the desktop PC route and building my PC for fun, and not opt for Steam Deck or some other type of Windows handheld device that's much cheaper. So having no history or background with Steam or some of the other digital platforms to play games, it may surprise some of you that I actually have quite an extensive Steam library to my disposal, thanks to the Friends and Family program. So my brother and his girlfriend shared their Steam library with me after I built my gaming PC. And I was surprised to find that they had nearly 700 games that were all games that I could play. So here's my Steam library. And as you can see, there are quite a number of games on the left-hand side here. Just so many, more than I could ever possibly play, most likely. And there are plenty of games here that I probably would never play, but there are some that I have been interested in buying physically, that I think it makes sense for me to try them out here first before deciding whether or not I want to own them physically. And of course also before checking what their build is like on the physical disc or cart. But yeah, it was really surprising when I discovered there were over 600, nearly 700 games here. And a lot of just great games that have from multiple genres that I haven't played before, because I tend to kind of keep to my comfort zone of RPGs, visual novels, a platformer here or there. So this is really a great gift that my brother and his girlfriend gave me, letting me extensively play their vast library of games and for me to try it out. And as you can see, I've already started playing some. Only have just over 19 hours, it looks like, in Baldur's Gate 3. I played this so much when I first built my PC back in November. I need to return to it because I was really enjoying my playthrough, and I could see myself diving back in and doing some other playthroughs as well. So I think that'll be a lot of fun. And I've been dabbling with a few other games, but not as much as Baldur's Gate here. And as you can see, I haven't really done much PC gaming since November. So I want to get back into it because I've been preoccupied with some other games on other consoles naturally. And I think what's also really great about having digital games, not only can I try games I haven't played before and I could play them really optimized. I really want to replay Witcher 3 on PC because I initially played it on the Switch. So I think this is a great way, of course, to play it. And I also think this is a good opportunity if I want to start dabbling in streaming, because I would feel more comfortable streaming from PC over a console system. So I've been kind of going back and forth on whether or not I want to do this, mostly because I have a full-time job and it's hard for me to put out videos regularly enough as it is. So I'm not sure how streaming would factor into that, and I don't know if I would be a very good streamer, to be honest. But it's something I think I want to try at least once this year. So if there's any interest, I will be more inclined to give it a try. But using a PC can be really great because there's some games that play, I think, better with a keyboard and mouse. For example, Baldur's Gate 3, I think, is one such example that excels in this. I do own this physically on the PS5, but as you see here, I've been playing it on PC because I just find it a lot more convenient. And you can also use any controller you want really on PC. So I've played a little bit with an Xbox controller, my PlayStation DualSense one. I should probably try one of the Switch ones one of these days just to see what controller I prefer. But it's just so great how much choice you have with PC. It could be overwhelming, as I mentioned. There's so many games here that sometimes I don't know which one to play next or try. Just like with emulation, I usually can't get past just a huge library that's plopped in front of me because a little bit of a choice paralysis issue there. But overall, I'm really excited that this is now something I have access to. But these are just all the games that I currently have access to on Steam, which is kind of limiting in the digital space itself. So we talked about ownership with physical media, how if you own the game physically and it's not connected to any sort of internet connection, there's no way that the publisher or anyone else can pull it away from you or take it down or delist it. It has happened in the past where there have been games that have been delisted that you can no longer access even though you've paid for them. Maybe not so much on Steam as of now, but definitely on some other digital platforms we've seen in the past from various Microsoft stores, PlayStation stores, Nintendo stores. It's really been, I think, on most platforms on non-modern hardware we've seen this. And there's a possibility that it'll happen again when they change storefronts potentially or some other, licensing issues where a lot of the digital games will have to be pulled from storefronts. So Steam, of course, being a huge platform, I don't really see that happening in the near future, but who's to say what's going to happen in 10 years' time. But this is where some of the other digital storefronts and platforms available on PC may be able to come in. Platforms such as GOG that provide DRM-free digital games. So once you buy a digital game from them, oftentimes you will have it for life. And you could store that game on the cloud or any other servers or even on a physical USB stick if you wanted. The digital game is yours. So from a preservation and ownership standpoint, that does sound quite ideal. You could save the game on multiple devices if you wanted. Whereas with physical media, your game is only tied to one single object, which may deteriorate or get lost or something damaged over time. Unfortunately, not all games have a DRM-free option. There's only a small subset on GOG that allows you that option where you could have true ownership in the digital way. But the DRM-free option library is slowly building over time, so eventually we might see more games transition to over there once publishers and developers kind of recognize the value DRM-free provides on digital storefronts. So I think that's a great option, especially when the physical option is not ideal, meaning that it requires an internet connection, huge downloads to perform well, and just other sort of graphical enhancements that maybe will be better on the PC rather than certain console systems. But that all said, there are certainly still issues when it comes to the PC. You have to have the right hardware in order to have the ideal performance for many games, especially the new ones coming out. I'm thankfully in a situation where I'm using a 4080 Super graphics card and a really good CPU, where I don't really think I'll encounter too many issues, at least on a hardware standpoint, for a long time. But there are plenty of games that, no matter what your hardware is, they're really not just optimized well on PC at all. And that's just because of just how many different hardware options are out there. And it's really hard to tailor a PC game to fit all of those. So a lot of developers, it seems like, kind of give up or intend to maybe down the line improve it over time. But when a new game is released, it's often not the best way to experience the game. So the question is, how do I plan to approach the digital versus physical dilemma when it comes to buying games in the future? So I've thought about this quite extensively these last few months, and I do think there is some sort of compromise I plan on making. And it kind of circles back to what I talked about at the beginning of this video, which is a curated collection. There are just so many great video games that we are so spoiled for choice nowadays when it comes to the retro games, remasters, new games. There's just so much choice. And I really enjoy physical media and collecting as its own hobby. But I think I need to be a bit more selective when it comes to games I plan to purchase physically. And that often entails me waiting for a game to release and see how the physical game build is. Meaning that the game may not be 100% complete on the disc or cart, but for the most part, most of it's there and it runs pretty well without having some sort of download. The exception to this, of course, is pre-ordering games that are limited and may go out of stock, which for the most part, I just wanted to focus on my favorite franchises, like Falcom games or Xenoblade, Fire Emblem, those type of games where I'm most likely going to be buying the collector edition anyway. But for most other games, I want to really exercise patience, even with the FOMO tactics we see in the limited print publishers and places like that. Because if I really want a game and it's built well, I am willing to pay a little bit up for it because I know it's something that I would like to have and own on my shelves. But if the game doesn't have a good physical edition, or if I don't think it's going to release physically anytime soon, I would probably opt for a digital release on PC. This is of course considering whether or not the game is well optimized for PC and if it runs well. And I think this is also going to be me exercising a lot of patience and waiting for sales, because Steam in particular is notorious for having great sales. Though if I want the DRM-free option, if it's available, I would consider owning it on GOG instead of Steam. And there's also other great digital deals out there, like Humble Bundle, where you can get really cheap games from time to time. That gives you a Steam code to activate. So those are also things that I would consider, but I really don't want to add more to my brother and his girlfriend's gaming library if I don't have to, meaning that I'm not going to probably partake in all of the sales unless it's a game I plan to play right away. Because I think there's less FOMO when it comes to digital sales in general, because often if a game goes on sale on Steam or some other place, it's most likely going to show up on sale again because it's an older game. So for the most part, I don't really plan to buy too many digital games, at least anytime soon, because I have such a huge library of games I have access to that I want to enjoy first. But there may be some exceptions. I may, as a content creator, be given digital codes that I can enjoy on PC right away, or it might be a highly anticipated release that I want to play right away. I, of course, will give exceptions to that, but to be very, again, selective and deliberate with these choices. So I hope sharing some of my philosophy when it comes to the digital versus physical media considerations and game buying was either interesting or may have helped some of you with your decision as well when it comes to balancing all these different ways to play games. And I'd love to hear what some of you guys think when it comes to digital versus physical media, and whether or not you are trying to exercise some sort of balancing act like I am, or if you're all digital or all physical media. I'd love to hear from you, and until my next video, bye guys.